What's your style?
My style? You can call it the art of fighting without fighting.
Mr. Lee, I've come to speak to you about a tournament of martial arts. A tournament to which you've already received an invitation. Specifically, a tournament organized by Mr. Han.
Han's tournament.
I know. But we'd very much like you to attend that particular tournament, Mr. Lee. This girl was last seen at a party aboard Han's private junk. They'd reported her lost at sea before the body was found. We believe he selects attractive girls and methodically builds their dependence on drugs, then sells them to an elite clientele around the world.
I gather you still don't have enough to bust up his operation.
We know everything. We can prove nothing. We want you to go in there as our agent. Get us our evidence.
Don't hit back.
Gentlemen, welcome. You honor our island. I look forward to a tournament of truly epic proportion.
You seem to be very much at home here, Mr. Roper.
This guy Han's got a great sense of hospitality.
Enter the Dragon was released in July of 1973 in Hong Kong and August in the United States. Directed by Robert Clouse, it was produced on a very small budget of around $850,000 and grossed over $90 million worldwide. It was the first production to be financed by Chinese and American producers. Bruce Lee unfortunately passed away 6 days before the release of Enter the Dragon. It shocked the world and especially the fans who couldn't believe what happened. At such a young age and in the prime of his health, many just couldn't believe it. There has been rumours thrown around for years concerning his death, but his wife Linda has said it was an issue with fluid on the brain, brought on by hypersensitivity to a painkiller. Bruce Lee before Enter the Dragon was already a superstar in Hong Kong, thanks to his massive hit movies The Big Boss, Fist of Fury and The Way of the Dragon. Bruce was filming his latest movie The Game of Death when Fred Weintraub visited the set and told him that he and Warner Brothers were impressed with what he achieved so far in Hong Kong cinema and wanted him to star in his first American feature film, Enter the Dragon. The movie became the starting ground for many other martial artists. Sammo Hung, who appears at the beginning, went on to star in many action movies, and to many viewers will remember him from the TV show Martial Law. As most Bruce Lee fans know, Jackie Chan turns up in the movie as a random thug. He tackles Bruce from behind and gets defeated quickly, getting his neck snapped. I think the majority of it was shot on location in Hong Kong. All movies shot there are filmed with no sound, so when you do watch the movie, it has that studio dubbed sound to it, and it isn't off-putting, but it sticks out quite badly. The actor playing Han couldn't speak English, so when he acted out his scenes, someone off camera would say a line in English, and he would repeat back what they said. And he was later dubbed over by the actor who played Mr. Wing in Gremlins. Joining Bruce Lee at the tournament is martial arts expert Jim Kelly, who sadly just passed away at 67 years old. I think after Bruce, Jim Kelly is probably the next best martial artist to watch on screen when it came to the fighting. His technique on camera was pretty good, and above all, he was fast. He didn't really have a big career after this. The director Robert Clouse tried to do a solo project with him called Black Belt Jones, and Jim did do a number of movies during the 70s, but had little success. John Saxon plays the womanising gambler. Many people will probably recognise him as the father of Nancy Thompson from Nightmare on Elm Street. John Saxon was already an established star at the time. His character was supposed to be killed off in the film, but his agent wasn't too happy about that. So things were changed around, so Jim Kelly's character Williams was killed off. Hans's henchman Bolo was a former bodybuilder who met Bruce while they were filming a commercial, and they became good friends and Bruce invited him to be part of the movie. I believe he took on the name Bolo as his stage name after this film. He will later go on to star in many martial arts films including Bloodsport with Van Damme, another movie that basically copies the Enter the Dragon formula. Lee receives an invitation to a martial arts competition on an island organised by the mysterious Mr. Han. Lee learns from his teacher that Han was also once a Shaolin student, but had been expelled from their order for abusing their code of conduct. A man named Braithwaite from British intelligence approaches Lee and asks for his help in an undercover mission. Hahn is suspected to be involved in drug trafficking and prostitution. Since Hahn's island is only partially in their jurisdiction, they are unable to conduct any formal investigations. Hahn runs a martial arts school to protect his drug operations, as well as holding his tournament every 3 years to recruit international talent to expand upon his criminal business. Before leaving, Lee learns that his bodyguard, O'Hara, had been involved in the death of his sister, Sue Lin. Lee arrives on Hahn's island and receives a warm reception. Joining him are the other competitors, including Roper, a down-on-his-luck white American playboy gambler on the run from the mob, and Williams, an African-American activist on the run after defending himself against 2 racist white policemen in Los Angeles. Roper and Williams are revealed to be old friends who also have a betting scam going on. One will underperform until the other can get a bet on the outcome at good odds. Both win their first fights. At night, the competitors are all offered girls of their choice by Hahn's assistant, Tanya. Williams chooses several women, while Roper cunningly chooses Tanya. Lee asks for a girl he saw earlier in Hahn's entourage. Lee knows she is Mei Ling, an agent whom Braithwaite has placed on the island to gather intelligence. However, she is unable to give Lee much information, as she has been unable to escape Hahn's strict observation. That night, Lee begins searching the island for evidence, and finds a secret entrance to an underground base, where drugs are being manufactured and tested on unwitting prisoners. He runs into Hahn's guards, but manages to take them down before they can identify him. He is seen by Williams, though, who is outside for some fresh air and practice. The next day, Hahn warns the competitors about wandering out of their rooms at night. He punishes the guards for their failure in their duties for leaving them to the hands of the sadistic Bolo, Hahn's chief bodyguard. Moments later, Lee is called to his first match, and his opponent turns out to be O'Hara, who is clearly outclassed and eventually killed when he attacks Lee with broken bottles. Later, Hahn summons Williams and accusing him of attacking the guards the previous night. Williams denies this, claiming he wasn't the only one outside. As the argument heats up, Hahn summons his henchmen. Williams takes them out, but Hahn himself seems too much for him and he beats him to death with his cast iron prosthetic left hand. Hahn takes Roper on a tour of his underground base and invites him to be his representative for his operations in the United States. Roper seems reluctant, but Hahn shows him the mutilated corpse of Williams, hinting that Roper will face the same fate if he refuses to cooperate. That same night, Lee breaks into the underground base and gathers evidence to warrant Hahn's arrest, but sets off an alarm while messaging Braithwaite. Hong Kong film expert Bay Logan in the late 90s for the BBC discussed some of the shooting locations on Enter the Dragon and shows how things have changed so quickly in Hong Kong.
This is Aberdeen Harbour, and it's visible at the beginning of Enter the Dragon when you see the warriors going to the island, embarking on a junk. This is where it actually leaves from. This was really an excuse for the filmmakers to show some local colour, because at that time there were many more boats here, and many old boats that have since been moved, with many people living on them, some of whom never touched dry land. So they actually got to shoot some wonderful local faces, and it kind of added some texture to an American film being shot in Hong Kong. Behind me you'll see a big building. It's nestled between high-rises. Those high-rises weren't there in 1973. That was actually the cutaway to denote the castle of Mr. Han as it was used in the film. Of course, most of the movie was shot in the studios of Golden Harvest over on Hammer Hill Road in Kowloon. This is actually one of the rare exterior locations that remains almost exactly as it was in the film itself. As you can see behind me, we have these steps, and it's up these steps that the fighters entering Mr. Han's tournament walked to the tennis courts where the actual fighting took place. Mr. Han's palace was supposedly situated up at the top there. As you can see, these new giant complexes reach up to the sky, and it just shows how quickly places change in Hong Kong.
The score to Enter the Dragon is loved by many and has been sampled countless times by DJs and rap artists. It infuses Eastern music with a fine layer of funk. Lalo Schriffen, who had previously worked on Dirty Harry, THX 1138, Bullet, and created the theme tune to Mission Impossible, and later on in his career he provided scores to the Rush Hour trilogy. This is one of his finest and probably his most iconic soundtracks to date. It's a great listening experience by itself, loads of chilled, relaxed, funky tunes. one or two tracks have that weird horror-like sound to them when Bruce jumps on his victims' chests to finish them off. I absolutely love those tracks. The soundtrack is easily available on CD and iTunes. When I first saw Enter the Dragon as a kid, I was blown away by Bruce Lee like many other young boys growing up, and even adults when they first got a glimpse of Bruce in action. It was like seeing a real-life Superman. Incredible physique and had this immense speed and power, it was like nothing you'd ever seen before. He left a huge lasting impression on everyone. From when you first see him fighting, you want to be like him, and it encouraged people to get into martial arts and to build up their fitness and to get into shape. Bruce Lee was a master of nunchucks, and he used them frequently in his films, and uses them again in Enter the Dragon, but only for a short period. Many kids at the time tried to create their own nunchucks and ended up doing damage to themselves, and in the UK they got banned, and every action movie which included this weapon were cut, and it wasn't until the 25th anniversary of Enter the Dragon the cutscenes were restored for UK audiences. The film has been regarded as one of the best martial arts films ever made, which, considering now it's been 40 years and there's been thousands produced since then, that statement is maybe a bit far-fetched. It's really down to what style of martial arts movie you like. Jackie Chan does more physical stuff on screen and it's more difficult and obviously more life-threatening. But if you prefer the more serious approach, you may consider Bruce's films more superior. Enter the Dragon is basically a vehicle to promote Bruce Lee to US audiences, and it worked. He became a superstar to them overnight. Even after death, Bruce Lee is more popular than ever. As a story, it's very simple but effective. It's a typical James Bond plot disguised around this tournament Bruce Lee attends. But with its simplicity, I find it very rewatchable. Bruce himself injected a lot of his own philosophies and ideas into the script, and improved upon what could have been a very average film. There is one scene that always makes me chuckle. Bruce clearly kicks a dummy of the actor playing Han. The dummy flies past camera at lightning speed. I've seen this movie so many times I've lost count. It's certainly the best looking out of all of Bruce's movies, probably down to the American crew having a bit more experience and the changes in film stock. Enter the Dragon has certainly been looked after with more care over the years, probably because it's a Warner Brothers feature. If you watch Bruce's previous flicks, they are very rough around the edges, and Way of the Dragon has major issues with focus in some shots. So Enter the Dragon does look more professional, but when it comes to the action side of things, I think Way of the Dragon has some of Bruce's best choreography, or possibly the incomplete Game of Death footage. Because of the huge popularity of this film, it has been spoofed over the years, and the most well-known spoof is A Fistful of Yen, which was the longest segment from the spoof movie, Kentucky Fried Movie, directed by John Landis. It's definitely worth checking out. It's a great parody on Enter the Dragon. Bruce Lee shouldn't be remembered for how he died, but should be remembered for how he lived, and what he achieved throughout the short time he was with us. He managed to express himself honestly and truthfully. That charisma he had on camera, he had off camera. There's been no one like him ever since on the big screen. He changed action cinema for the good, and inspired many. No one will ever replace Bruce Lee.
When you get to the city, pay your respects to your sister and your mother. You will not agree with what I'm going to do. It is contrary to all that you have taught me and all that Sulin believe. I'm hoping you'll join us, represent us in the United States.
I'm beginning to understand this thing with the tournament. I mean the whole setup. If you want to talk about this thing, I'll be in my room.
There were some questions which I was forced to ask. I got no answers. You want me to join this? There are certain realities I want us to have a clear understanding.
You have offended my family, and you have offended the Shaolin Temple.